Okay, so have you ever found yourself needing to return something? And you're standing there feeling just a little bit unsure, maybe, about how to handle that conversation. Make it polite, but, effective. It happens all the time, doesn't it? Well, today we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating guide about real-world English dialogues, and it's specifically focused on that tricky art of returning products. Our mission here is basically to pull out the essential language tools, the practical strategies, even some of the subtle psychology behind it all, everything you need to navigate these customer service interactions smoothly, whether, you're the customer making the return or maybe you're the person helping them out.
Right. And what's so interesting here, I think, is that it's not just about the words you use.
Mhm.
It's really digging into the dynamics of polite communication, specifically in these, well, transactional settings. We're going to break down not just what to say, but really why certain phrases land better than others, why they work.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this with a classic scenario: returning a shirt. Clothing store. We'll follow a customer. Let's call him Mark. He's trying to return a shirt. Simple reason: wrong size. So he goes up to the counter, and his opening line is pretty straightforward, quite polite. "I'd like to return this shirt. I bought it a few days ago, but I realized it's the wrong size." And the assistant, Rachel, she responds, "May I ask why you're returning it?" Then straight away offers options. "Would you prefer to exchange it for a larger size, or would you like a refund?"
Yeah. And that initial exchange is really key. Mark's opening, I'd like to return this shirt. It's clear, direct, but it's got that layer of politeness. And notice how I realized it's the wrong size that frames it as his realization, not a fault with the shirt itself. It just softens the whole thing, makes it less like a complaint. And Rachel's questions, may I ask why and would you prefer? Those are perfect examples of polite inquiry, respectful ways to gather information and offer solutions right away. Sets a good tone.
Absolutely, that initial politeness is crucial. But okay, here's where it often gets a bit more, well, interesting, right? What happens when store policy seems to block the return? Our source material has this exact situation: the shirt Mark bought. Turns out it was marked final sale. And usually that means no refunds. So Rachel has to deliver this slightly awkward news. She says, "The only issue is that this item was part of our final sale promotion. According to our policy, final sale items are not eligible for refunds only exchanges."
hmm And if you look closely at Rachel's phrasing here, it's actually quite clever,
Yeah.
strategically speaking. The only issue is that's so much softer than a flat "no, you can't," isn't it?
Mhm.
And pointing to the policy, according to our policy, that's critical. It makes it about the rules, not her personal decision. It depersonalizes the refusal. It kind of shifts the focus away from a potential conflict between them towards this external factor, the policy. It helps everyone save face. Even when Mark says, I understand, before pushing back slightly, that acknowledgement matters. And his follow-up, is there any way to make an exception? That's a perfect example of how to ask for flexibility without being demanding. It's polite. It's exploratory.
Right, it keeps the door open. And Rachel's response is also part of that strategy, isn't it? She doesn't shut him down. She says, "Let me check with the manager." That little phrase does so much work, buys time, shows she's willing to at least try, turns a potential no into a maybe. It signals she's trying to help, even with the policy constraints.
Exactly. It shows goodwill.
So the million-dollar question, or maybe just the price of the shirt question: does Mark get his refund? Well, after she checks, the manager actually says yes. An exception is made. Rachel comes back and says, "Thanks for waiting. Spoke to my manager, and in this case, we can make an exception and offer a refund."
And listen to that phrasing again. In this case, we can make an exception. That little phrase highlights that this isn't the norm. It emphasizes the store is doing something special, which reinforces the positive outcome for Mark. And Mark's response is just as important. Oh, that's great. I really appreciate it. And later, thanks again for being so helpful. Expressing that genuine gratitude is vital. It smooths everything over, leaves everyone feeling better. And then Rachel adds that helpful little tip for the future. Just to let you know, for future purchases, anything labeled final sale is normally non-refundable. Good expectation management. Not scolding, just informing.
Yeah, that's handled really well. Manages the current situation and sets up future understanding. Okay, so that's the final sale hurdle. But what if the item isn't just the wrong size or something you change your mind about? What if it's actually, broken, defective? Our guide covers that too. There's another role play, this time about returning a Bluetooth speaker that just isn't working. The customer, Emma, she says pretty directly, "I bought this Bluetooth speaker last week, but it's not working properly. I'd like to return it." And the assistant, this time called Mark, he replies, "Since it's within the 14-day return period and it's a defective product, we can either replace it or refund you." Much more straightforward, it seems.
hmm And that highlights a really important distinction, doesn't it? The reason for the return often changes the game. Defective products usually have different rules applied to them compared to, say, buyer's remorse or sizing issues. The fault is with the product itself, so the language naturally shifts towards resolving that fault replacement or refund are often the standard procedure because it's clearly a product issue, not just a preference thing. Emma's directness works here because the problem is concrete.
Makes sense. So the source actually pulls together a kind of cheat sheet of useful phrases, these key tools for polite interactions. Things like, I'd like to return this. That's your polite request opener. May I ask why? The standard polite inquiry, would you prefer? Offering those helpful options. Is there any way? That gentle probe for an exception. Let me check. The classic polite delay or time buyer. I understand, but the crucial phrase for polite disagreement or navigating tricky spots. And of course, thanks for your help. Simple appreciation.
Right, and looking at that list, it begs the question, what makes these phrases so effective? Why do they work so well? It really boils down to tone, doesn't it?
Oh.
And conveying respect. It's about signaling collaboration instead of confrontation.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit more. The guide puts a lot of emphasis on modal verbs, could, would, may, might. How they soften the language, like compare just barking, give me a refund, with the much, much gentler, could I get a refund, please? Huge difference in tone.
It's enormous, isn't it? And that's exactly the point. These subtle linguistic shifts using would you mind instead of do this, or could I instead of I want, or may I ask, is there any way, might I suggest? They all work to make your request less direct, more respectful. And that critical thinking about choosing your words carefully, it's not just about being nice. It's strategic. It's essential in any customer service context, really, whether you're the customer asking or the rep responding. It just paves the way for a smoother interaction and usually a better result for everyone.
So pulling this all together for you, our listener, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive for handling returns, either as the customer or the assistant? Okay, if you're the customer, always start polite. I'd like to return is a good baseline. Explain why clearly, but keep it brief. Be prepared for store policies. Try to stay calm, even if it's not what you want to hear initially. If you hit a snag or disagree, use that soft, polite language we talked about. Is there any way?
And always, always say thank you. Seriously, even if the outcome isn't perfect, gratitude goes a long way.
And flipping that, if you're the one behind the counter, the customer service pro, stay calm, stay friendly. That's job one. When you have to deliver bad news like policy limits, use those softening phrases. The only issue is, or according to our policy, avoid blunt refusals. And always try to offer alternatives if you can. And exchange, checking with a manager. It shows you're trying to find a solution, even if it's not the customer's first choice. It builds that crucial customer relationship. Absolutely. This whole deep dive really drives home how precise language combined with a respectful approach can just transform a potentially awkward, even confrontational situation into something smooth and successful.
It really does. It's a testament to the power of careful communication in navigating those everyday interpersonal hurdles, turning potential friction into, well, collaborative problem solving.
So as you think about all this, here's a final thought to chew on, something maybe a bit provocative. How could understanding these subtle language cues, the politeness strategies, the negotiation tactics, the psychology behind it, how could that apply to other tricky interactions in your life? Way beyond just returning something at a store, think about the power of a well-placed, empathetic, I understand, but, or a gentle, is there any way, maybe in a discussion with family, or during a tough negotiation at work, or even sorting out something with a neighbor. These principles of respectful, strategic communication, they're pretty universal, aren't they?